Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, May the 27th, 2025. Today there is a new moon in Gemini, and I want to talk about this new moon. This new moon is not particularly spectacular, but I still think that it is worthy of comment. But before I look at the new moon, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, May the 27th. So let's look at the chart for today. As always, set for noon in New York. And here it is. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So here is the chart, and the moon is, you can see there is a new moon in this chart. Sun is at 6.5 Gemini, and the moon is at 14 Gemini. So this new moon takes place, when does it take place? It takes place London time. This new moon takes place at 4:02, so 4:02 in the morning. So in fact, this new moon takes place last night on Monday evening, if you're in the Americas. So new moon is a new beginning, and the old lunar cycle is dead, and we're now in something new. And at the time of this new moon, you can see that there are a lot of planets in Gemini: Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, and of course the moon. And so there is a real Gemini flavour to this lunation, a feeling perhaps that we want to make some changes, and we may have got bored of one thing and we just want to get involved in something else. And it is a time really that is very positive. I mean, look at what's happening. If you look at the 7 traditional planets, they're all in positive signs. So when I say positive sign, I'm talking about fire and air. So we've got 4 planets in Gemini, and then we've got Saturn, Neptune. Well, Neptune is not a traditional planet, but if we just count the traditional planets, we've got 4 traditional planets in Gemini. We've got Saturn and Venus in Aries, and then we've got Mars in Leo. So fire and air completely dominate, and the only planet in an Earth sign is Uranus. So with all this positive energy, many of us feel that now is a time when we want to move forward. It's not necessarily a time for huge amounts of reflection, and that could be a problem. There may be a lack of subtlety there, and even a lack of sensitivity. No water, nothing in a water sign. So that could be a downside to the day, and we have all these sort of outer planets moving into positive signs. Pluto's now in Aquarius, Neptune's in Aries, Uranus is still in Taurus, but it's going to move into Gemini soon enough. Saturn in Aries, Jupiter still in Gemini. So of course, soon enough, Jupiter will move into Cancer, and so that will address the balance, but the positivity at the moment, I think, is quite impressive. And Mercury is making a trine to Pluto. So Mercury is at 3:31 Gemini, making a trine to Pluto at 3:42 Aquarius. So when you've got Mercury trine Pluto, you could say that there is the desire to be persuasive. Some of us can be very persuasive, and we can use our minds to create change. So our minds, we have an idea, we talk about these ideas, and that in turn has an impact. And then there's just our mind in itself. Without reference to the outside world, we might have ideas. Mercury trine Pluto. And these ideas, might change everything. That's what Mercury trine Pluto is all about. And going back to the moon, the moon is making a sextile to Mars. That moon sextile Mars gets things going. It's action orientated. So if we're not happy with the way things are, we can just move things along. So overall, a very positive day, and we just have to be careful that it isn't too positive. We might be in such a hurry to make things happen that we forget to be reflective. So that is the picture set for New York. If we look at that chart set for Sydney, sort of midday Sydney time, then it is slightly different. The moon is earlier in Gemini, but it's still in Gemini, and that new moon is very present. So I don't think there's a great deal of difference between the experience in Sydney, Australia, or Australasia, and say in the Americas. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the Earth, the Sun at the center of the solar system. And there you can see that Mars opposition Saturn is now pretty much exact. And I've been talking about this Mars-Saturn opposition for some time, and it is a problem aspect. Now, it may not be so direct as a geocentric opposition. Heliocentric aspects are more subtle, but we do get this idea of frustration. Things not really working as well as they should, and getting annoyed about it. And Mercury is joining the party. So Mercury in heliocentric Taurus is making a sextile to Saturn, and it's making a sextile to Mars. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's a good thing, that Mercury kind of mitigates it, that Mercury perhaps provides some flow, perhaps finds a way of dealing with the frustration. But that might just be a geocentric view. When you're looking at a heliocentric chart, it's very often just the case that it is the aspect that matters. And Mercury making that sextile to Saturn, trine to Mars, may just be triggering the Mars-Saturn opposition. So, for many of us, it could be frustrating. And in spite of all that positivity, it may be difficult to accomplish as much as we wanted. Perhaps we're being too positive. If we don't feel what's going on, then we might make some mistakes. So there could be an issue there, and so that's probably the main thing going on. I don't think there's much else to report. You could say that Chiron is involved here, because Chiron is making a semi-sextile to Mercury. And so Chiron semi-sextile Mercury, the challenge to say something meaningful. We don't want to be completely quiet, and we want to say something that has an impact. And looking at the geocentric picture, that's certainly something we can do, because Mercury is making that trine to Pluto. And if we want to create change through our words, then I think that is certainly something that we can do. So let's now transition to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, May the 27th, 2025. Aries. Aries, it's a day when you're really feeling the new moon. And I think this new moon is something positive for you. It allows you to speak your mind in a way that is natural and spontaneous, and you're helped by the fact that this new moon is sextile Mars. Well, the new moon having taken place, you get the moon making that sextile to Mars, and so that really does allow you to, to say what's on your mind, and you can do it in a way that is very spontaneous, and you don't have to restrict yourself. Not at all, absolutely not. And if you're not being appreciated in one place, well, you can just move somewhere else. And in fact, Aries, it's a good idea to have a sort of constant flow, moving from one place to another, one person to another, one situation to another. You're not really going to be too happy, spending too much time in one place. And your ability to move quickly is going to be important. And you could actually be quite impulsive. You decide you want to go somewhere, in person. Okay, you might be able to make a phone call, but it's always so much easier if you can just turn up, on the spur of a moment and make an immediate impact. And you certainly can make an immediate impact. You are at the moment, Aries, very persuasive. The things you say make perfect sense, and if anyone is sort of sluggish, they don't want to move, you know what to say, and it won't be long before you have convinced another person that that your way is the right way, and maybe you don't even have to do any convincing, because at the moment, Aries, there is something about you that is fundamentally exciting. And people want excitement, and Aries is one of the most exciting signs of the 12. I mean, that's always the case, but today it's especially the case. Though you don't just have to think about everything in terms of action. Words can just be just as significant and can be just as impactful. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, it is a very positive day. It's a positive because there are a lot of planets in air signs and fire signs, and there aren't any traditional planets in earth or water signs. So that says something about how you relate to other people. I think in many cases you can relate in a very dynamic way, and in most cases this will be appreciated, and so you can continue to benefit also from the fact that Venus and Mars are in trine. Though if there is an issue with relationships, it could be a lack of sensitivity. This is not a day for being emotionally sensitive. That kind of emotional subtlety is going to be difficult. I think it's going to be difficult for an Aries, but you might have to make an effort. If a relationship is at all complex, has been complex in the past, and it seems to be straightforward now, don't make assumptions. So Aries, make a little bit of an effort to try to understand what another person is feeling, and not to do anything too outrageous, but probably you can afford to be less sensitive than usual. But don't completely take liberties or make assumptions, because I don't think that would necessarily be such a good idea. But I don't want to take away from the fact, Aries, that today looks really great. Taurus, it is a day when a lot is going on, but it's going on in such a way that you don't necessarily feel part of it. I mean, you're in the middle of something, and you can certainly be influenced by what's happening, but it's not your show. And so Taurus, I think maybe you should accept that. Venus, your ruler, it's in Aries. It's okay. We'll go into Taurus eventually, but that's where it is. And you can perhaps really feel the fact that it's in Aries, in the sign just before Taurus. And so you're not ready to really impose yourself and to get noticed. And if you do try to get anything done, it might be hard work. It could be like struggling through treacle. It just doesn't work out. And what is the nature of that resistance? I mean, it could be other people, but other people are quite positive at the moment. A lot of people are ready for action. I think the issue may be you. You're not ready to move at the same speed as everyone else. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that you have a different perspective. And it may concern you that some people are just all into action, movement forward, and that's not the right approach. It's certainly not the right approach for you. So, Taurus, it might be best if you do things your own way and you resist outside pressure. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be a useful day. We have a new moon, and this new moon has a financial dimension, new moon in Gemini. And so do have a look at the area of money and how things are and what you want to bring to bear, what you want to change. And if you find that you have a different view of money, different from, say, what it was a few days ago, maybe money will become more important. And there are things you want to sort out and you hadn't been able to sort them out previously. Well, if you're in that situation, now is the time to start moving. Okay, you don't have to move today. We've just got a new moon. Generally speaking, initiatives taking place exactly on the new moon don't always work, and so maybe you should wait for the moon to move from Gemini into Cancer. But when that happens, have another look, see what you can do to improve your finances, or just have a different attitude. The moon is in Gemini, and of course this whole new moon is in Gemini, and perhaps with money you in the past have been too single-minded, and you thought there was only one way of sorting things out. And with this new moon in Gemini, you realize there are other alternatives, and those alternatives might have to be explored, or not. They don't have to be explored, but you might want to explore them, and be open to new ideas and new attitudes regarding money. Though I'm not telling you what to do. You've got to work that out, get professional help if necessary. But you have a keen sense for money, and at the moment, Taurians always do, but at the moment you're perhaps becoming a little more open-minded. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, I don't think that today is especially extroverted. I don't think that you're in the mood for being out and about, meeting lots of different people. I don't think that's you. Yet, Venus is still making a trine to Mars, so the right relationship, someone probably who you already know, that kind of relationship should work fine. I don't see any problems. I don't see any drama either. And if everything is understated, well, so much the better. Gemini, there's a lot of stuff in Gemini. It doesn't get more Gemini than today, I don't think. I mean, you look at it. You've got 4 planets in Gemini: Mercury, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter. Now, in a couple of days' time, maybe tomorrow, day after, the moon will go into Cancer. The next time the moon goes into Gemini, Jupiter will no longer be in Gemini. Jupiter's been in Gemini for a year. Jupiter will be in Cancer in a month's time. So as far as the Gemini emphasis is concerned, well, this is as good as it gets. Doesn't get any better from this. And so really try to make the most of today if you can. Don't stay in bed today. Don't do nothing. Really try to be as active as possible. And if you've got some idea you want to put into action, give it a go. I mean, I know it's a new moon, and one often says that at the new moon, one shouldn't take direct action because things are just too unsettled. They're too early. It's like a seed germinating. You don't want to pull that seed out of the ground while it's trying to germinate, because then it won't get anywhere. But there may be a bit of urgency here, and so you haven't got all the time in the world. I don't mean in a deadly sense, but what is it now that you're actually trying to accomplish? I believe you've got ideas and you want to get going. And as I said, it doesn't get any better. All things being equal. Okay, you may want to wait until that Gemini emphasis is slightly waning. I don't mean waning in a lunar sense, because the moon is very much waxing now with the new moon. But you might want to wait until the moon moves into Cancer. But don't hang around forever. And as far as making up your mind about things and deciding what's important, now really might be the time with those 4 planets in Gemini. And this new moon in Gemini, well, it's the Gemini new moon, and it is a new beginning. The moon is no longer waning, it is waxing. And so the next couple of weeks could be very important to you. And whatever you've been postponing, you've had all sorts of reasons why something couldn't happen, but whatever you've been postponing, well, now's the time. Now's the time to get it together. So Gemini, don't overanalyze the situation. Geminis can do that. I mean, that's a standard Gemini problem. And thinking about all the things that can go wrong, thinking about alternatives, and thinking that now is not quite the right time. Of course, I've got my sun in Gemini. I understand these issues. And so be ready to get going. And the moon is making a sextile to Mars as well. Moon in Gemini making a sextile to Mars in Leo, and that is a very communicative aspect. You're able to say what's on your mind, and you can speak with great power. And of course, you're helped by the fact that Mercury is now in Gemini. So I've been sort of going on and on about this theme, but I do think that you do get the message. And one thing about today is that it is very positive. When I say positive, I mean a lot of planets in fire signs and air signs, and pretty much nothing in the negative signs of earth and water. By the way, when I say positive, negative, I don't really mean that in a good or a bad sense. I'm thinking more like yin and yang. And it's great, but it's so positive, but perhaps it can be too positive. And there's always a place for reflection. And, right now, Gemini, try to consider and ask yourself what is influencing you, or what could influence you. And it's possible that you may be influenced by things which are at a different level, a level that you don't quite understand. And if you don't fully understand something, don't try to understand it, and not logically. There's a lot of logic around today. Perhaps there's too much logic, and some things just are. They represent collective impulses which you just have to be accepting of. But again, I don't want to overstate that. You just need to have a multidimensionality here to realize that things do happen at many levels. And one final point, Gemini. Mercury is making a trine to Pluto. This means, Gemini, you can be very influential. The things you say, the things you argue can be very effective, and people are going to listen to you. And your own ideas, which may have an unusual source, should be taken seriously. It is a time where ideas can be dramatic and they can be actionable. So, Gemini, it's a very powerful day, and I really hope that you're able to make the most of it. Cancer. Cancer, it's in some respects not really your kind of day. It's just a bit too much. I don't actually think it's going to be a bad day. I just think that it's going to be a day when there's just too much happening, too much going on, too much positivity, and you just might not want to be part of it. And this can maybe be summed up by the fact we've got a new moon in Gemini, the sign before Cancer. So the problem with a new moon is, the problem with any new moon is that the moon is under pressure because the moon is conjunct the sun. And so, that might be maybe one reason why Cancerians are so sensitive to the lunation cycle. And with the moon conjunct the sun, there is all this positivity, and you might feel just overwhelmed, and it's all too much. There are too many sensory and emotional inputs going on, and so you want to calm things down and not put yourself in places where you might feel vulnerable or overexposed to whatever's going on in the universe. Though the moon is making a sextile to Mars, and that sextile to Mars, it's not a bad aspect. In fact, the moon is also making a conjunction to Jupiter. Now, that conjunction to Jupiter is not going to take place until tomorrow, but Moon Jupiter conjunction is going to be fortunate. I think you can already start to feel it. So even if you are feeling that everything is too much, I don't think that means that you are actually pessimistic. There's a difference. There is a difference between being pessimistic and being overwhelmed. Just got too much to think about, too much to feel about, and also, thinking that the environment is not ideal. The environment is just not you, and it's not that it's hostile. It's just not you, and so Cancer. What I'm trying to say with that moon sextile Mars and the moon indeed starting to make a conjunction to Jupiter is that, don't just give up on things because things seem to be too complicated. Try to give things, give things your best shot, and see opportunities for action. There are opportunities for doing things, and they're not obvious. Then we're not talking about activities that necessarily get immediate attention, but there are things you can do, certainly behind the scenes, and they might relate to your own well-being and your own welfare. Everyone is worrying about themselves, and they've got their own missions and their own plans, and you should have your own plans and your own approach. And Cancer, do start to think about where you could do something to put yourself in a better position, and that moon sextile Mars could be the opportunity you are looking for, and it might have something to do with money. You see a financial opportunity, or you see an opportunity to sort out something of a financial nature, and you see your chance and you go for it. And it's nothing major, it's nothing that has to be announced or advertised, but your timely actions, Cancer, can really put you in a much better position financially if you can just be aware of that opportunity. But overall, Cancer, it is a day when things are a little bit too much, and so you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, and you really should be doing things at your own pace, and it's okay to have a fairly self-protective approach. That's absolutely okay, and that would be in keeping with the overall astrological environment. Leo, it's an action-orientated day. Leo, you're a fire sign. It's a positive sign. Obviously, because the positive signs are the fire and air signs. So it is very positive at the moment, and there's a lot of action and initiative, and this is all something that you really want to you want to be involved with it. I mean, you should be involved with it, and the current astrological situation, it's in keeping with who you are. So you are in your own world, and it's a world that you understand. And Leo, at the moment, you certainly benefit from a new moon. So this new moon in Gemini, it allows you to be fairly sociable. I think we talked about that yesterday, but you are becoming more sociable than usual. So however sociable you are, I mean, some Leos are not sociable. I mean, you can be a Leo and also be an introvert, but your sociability relative to yourself does seem to be improving with this action in Gemini. And so if you want to meet people, if you want to make introductions, then now might be your chance. And with this new moon, it's linked up with Mars in Leo, because you've got Mars moving through your sign. The moon is making a sextile to Mars, so that allows you to really push forward and to make introductions. You don't need to worry too much about social niceties. Everything has to be done in a proper way, and there's a certain form. I think that it's probably okay to be bold and brash. That's what's expected, because it's a bold and brash environment at the moment, with an overwhelming emphasis in fire and air signs, and the earth and water, they don't get a look in. I mean, you've got Uranus in Taurus, but that's really about it. And so you are at the center of things, and you are the initiator, and there's really not a great deal holding you back. And do take advantage of it. Things won't be like this again for some time. So if there is something you want to get going on, Leo, then I would suggest you do it, and you don't hold back. And additionally, it's important that you're open-minded, and you see the possibilities in everything. And if you find that something is working, just keep going with it, because it will carry on working, I think, and it will get better and better. And so it's It's, it is a question of, deciding where the opportunity is, and then, putting all your energy into it. And I think, then, seeing the dividends. So really, Leo, it's a good day, and I don't want to spoil your day by talking too much. Virgo. Virgo, there is an overwhelming emphasis in the sign Gemini. Loads of planets are in Gemini. It doesn't really get more Gemini than this. I mean, at least it's not going to get more Gemini than this year. This is the most Gemini day of the year. And then you might be asking, well, so what? You're a Virgo. Well, there is a relationship between Gemini and Virgo. Obviously, they're both mutable signs. They're both ruled by Mercury, and in the Virgo chart, Gemini is right at the top. It's an angular sign. It's related to ambition and how you want to develop. And so, do really make the most of it. And with this new moon in Gemini, it can be a new beginning for you. And it is also a reminder that Jupiter is in Gemini. Jupiter has been in Gemini for a year. It's not going to stay in Gemini for much longer. And, this is, a time for Virgos to really sort of, move forward. Now, I do kind of understand the issue here, because there's a lot of positivity at the moment. There's overwhelming emphasis in fire and air. Now, Virgo is a negative sign. It's an earth sign. It's a mutable earth sign, but it's negative. And I must make this clear. When I say negative, I don't mean negative in a bad sense. It's more about perhaps being reflective, not always feeling that you have to take the initiative, bring something new into being. But this emphasis on Gemini is really inspiring. So even though you are Virgo as a negative sign, you really benefit from the positivity of today. A lot of other signs may be finding it more difficult. For example, Cancer or maybe Capricorn. But for you, this Gemini emphasis should be inspiring and motivating and challenging in a good sense. So Virgo, it's really matters that you make things happen. Now, you don't necessarily have to make things happen in a concrete external way. It's enough to have the idea and to have the plan, and that might be what the new moon is about. The new moon is the beginning. It's the beginning of the impulse to create change, and this new moon, it's going to be around for the next couple of weeks, and this new moon is quite close to Jupiter, and Jupiter is now moving into the last degrees of Gemini, but it is a final opportunity to really, really make the most of Jupiter in this sign. So, so Virgo, ask yourself, what do you need to start? What is it? You've got to start now. You've got to have some target that you absolutely want to have achieved at some level over the next couple of weeks. So, you don't have to necessarily come up with something overly dramatic. It has to be achievable, and I think that would be a very good way of benefiting from a new moon and all this Gemini energy. And additionally, don't assume that just because other people are not sympathetic or appear to be not sympathetic to your ideas, other people aren't listening, don't assume that always has to be the case. It does not have to always be the case. We have at the moment, Virgo, a trine aspect between Mercury and Pluto. And this Mercury-Pluto aspect does make you very powerful. It makes you very persuasive. And you can change things through your words, even through your intentions and through your will. And so if there's something you're not satisfied with, something that's holding you back, particularly if it's another person holding you back, then you can make the necessary changes. You can force change through. Libra. Libra, there is a lot going on today, and you do want to be part of it all, and you can certainly see the opportunities, and there could be a feeling of excitement, that that things are happening, that there are things to realize and things to explore. And with this new moon in Gemini, that's what the new moon can actually be about. And so you don't have to be satisfied with the way things are, because they can be changed, and you can move from one place to another. You can perhaps get some higher ground. I don't necessarily mean literally higher ground, but when you get higher ground, you can see more, and the more you can see, the better you're going to feel. And you don't have to be crowded out. You don't have to be worried too much about another person. You're still acclimatizing to the fact that Saturn has moved into Aries. That's true. Saturn into Aries, your opposite sign. So yeah, you're aware that some people are not always on your side, that some people might be holding you back, but it shouldn't be too much of a worry at the moment, because it's all about getting that higher ground, seeing things in perspective. So if there's a situation that you thought was holding you back, or even a person holding you back, you get the higher ground, and you can start to get a sense of where the power actually lies. And so Libra, you feel that now is a time, when you are ready, but at the same time, there's still something holding you back. You just don't feel ready. And it could be that at some level you're hanging on to the past. There's something you just don't want to change. It's worked in the past, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's best to just hang on. At least that might be your view. And I would suggest that you try to get over it. Why don't you want things to change? How is it helping you? Particularly as you're living in a changing world. If you don't change, it doesn't make any difference. The world is going to keep changing. And so perhaps you need to get over whatever might be holding you back and really take advantage of what's happening today. And with this new moon in Gemini, this gives you the opportunity, not just today, but over the next couple of weeks, to explore, to reconsider some of your ideas. And indeed, it's a great time for starting to think about a new idea, something you hadn't thought about before. It starts as being fairly ordinary and routine, but when you start to think about it, and one thing moves to another, and that just might change everything. It might even change your entire belief system, spiritual or ideological way, and that's a good thing. Every now and then one does have to change one's beliefs, or maybe I'm just saying that from a perspective of a Gemini. It may be different if you're a Libra, so I don't want to project my Gemini view onto you, but don't think that you've got everything sorted out, that you know what your beliefs are 100%. because I do think with this new moon there is some fine-tuning to be made, and it just could be that you get into contact with a new set of ideas, and that new set of ideas could change you, and change you, very much for the better. Scorpio. Scorpio, it's a day where you feel that you are under pressure. For many of the signs, it's a good day. There's no reason why you can't have a good day, but it is more difficult. And yes, you are aware of things that are pressurizing you, and things aren't as straightforward as you'd like to be, and you could actually find that the world is rather irritating. It's going too fast, it's too insensitive. People aren't stopping to think and feel, and that worries you, or it might worry you. But you're a Scorpio. You understand this. You understand the way things change, and you understand that where there's an extreme, there's always an opposite reaction. And talking about extremes, as I've been saying today, we have all of the 7 traditional planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, in positive signs. The positive signs being the fire and air signs, and in fact, the only planet in a negative sign is Uranus in Taurus, and Uranus is not a traditional planet. And for you, Scorpio, Scorpio is a negative sign, and I do not mean negative in a negative way. I don't mean it's bad. There are huge disadvantages in being too positive, being too much yang, too much outward energy, no reflection, no feeling, no understanding of what we're doing, no subtlety. And Scorpio understands the problem. And so, Scorpio, you may just feel that everything is moving too quickly. People are not thinking things through. People are just in the mood for action without responsibility, maybe. And it's not that it really hurts you. It doesn't. It might annoy you, but it doesn't damage you. It's just about you feeling a disconnect between yourself and whatever is going on around you. And perhaps you can take advantage of the situation. You are a deep thinker, always, but you can be an especially deep thinker at the moment. There is a lot of planets in Gemini, 4 planets in Gemini. And from a Scorpio view, Gemini is a challenging sign. It's a sign that's very different from your sign, but it does encourage you to think and to look at things in a new way. And today's new moon in Gemini, Scorpio, will give you the opportunity to, if you want to take that opportunity to be different, and to look at things in your way, but to look at things deeply in your way, and really start to understand what it's all about. And there are things going on that other people are part of, that they're engaged in, but they don't understand what they're doing. But you understand everything. And at the very least, that can give you a sense of superiority. It's always good to feel superior, isn't it? When other people are being infantile and careless and rushing around, going absolutely nowhere. That's a problem about being too positive. And you just have this different perspective. And so with this different perspective, you may be able to not just understand what's going on, but in the end, you can find a way of actually benefiting from it all. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, it's a good day, a fun day. We've got planets in fire signs. We've got Mars in Leo, we've got Venus in Aries, plus we've got a load of planets in Gemini, and we've got 4 planets in Gemini, plus a Gemini new moon. So yeah, it's all happening, isn't it? And Sagittarius, hopefully you'll feel excited that things are finally moving. But 4 planets in Gemini, 4 planets in your opposite sign, a new moon in your opposite sign. And you could say that Gemini is everything that you are not, or everything that you don't fully recognize, or you don't want to recognize. And inevitably, with 4 planets in Gemini, that may say something about other people and relationships. It's your opposite sign, Gemini, so that does have a link with other people and what other people want, and you have to take into account other people's needs, and that's not such a bad thing. By understanding other people, you give yourself a feeling about what is actually possible. And furthermore, it could be a time where other people have ideas. You don't have to come up with the ideas. It can be exhausting having to come up with ideas all the time, being the one to initiate. And it may be that the initiatives are coming from outside, that people have suggestions. Even if they don't have suggestions, you can feel that your environment is pushing you in a particular direction, and this might be a direction that you want to follow. And additionally, we've got a new moon in Gemini. So new moons represent new beginnings. The moon is no longer waning, it's now waxing. So with a new beginning, you might want to ask, where is that new beginning, in what kind of areas? Well, it could well be relationships. Now that could be a new relationship. This relationship could be important. I mean, it could be quite passing, and it doesn't have to be a relationship that's romantic. It could be any kind of relationship, but there just could be a new contact with another person, and this contact is likely to work in your favor, especially as Jupiter, your ruler, is also in Gemini. But the new moon can be about a change within an existing relationship. You mustn't assume that the relationships you're in are just permanent, unchanging. They're always going to stay the same. They're not. And hopefully with Jupiter moving through Gemini, Jupiter, your ruler, has been moving through Gemini for around a year. With Jupiter moving through Gemini, then that is a time when it is a time when you are wanting more from other people, you're wanting more from relationships, and now you've got the new moon in Gemini. You can start to see how you can gain from the various relationships in your life, and if they haven't been giving you what you wanted in the past, then now you can change things, and I think that you can change things, very much in your favor. And additionally, Sagittarius, at the moment, your artistic skills are very good. I mean, they are excellent, and you can create some amazing things. And if you have a vision about the way things should be, then you can present this vision, you can create this vision, you can actually, you can make something. And also, your ability to communicate is going to be really good, and you can talk about your ideas and what's important to you, and you can do it in a way that really is very convincing. And I think a lot of people today could actually find you quite inspiring, as well as being a very interesting person. Capricorn. Capricorn, it's perhaps a continuation of yesterday. And, when I was doing your horoscope for yesterday, I was suggesting that, maybe things are getting, ever so slightly over the top, at least from your perspective. You don't feel entirely comfortable with the way things are going because it's just all too much. And yeah, things might be moving too quickly, and you might be wondering, how best to handle things. And part of it is the fact that we've got a lot of planets in fire signs and air signs, and we've got no planets in earth signs, well, except if you count Uranus in Taurus. And so Capricorn, action could annoy you, and excessive action and disturbances could annoy you. I mean, just in your living space, obviously, unless you live in the middle of nowhere, you're probably aware of passing cars, perhaps neighbors' music, and even I don't know, where I live, you can even know the I-5. You can actually hear the I-5 from where I live, even though it's miles away. You can still hear the I-5. The I-5 being that big, the freeway that goes down from Canada to Mexico, but where this part of Washington is close to the I-5. And you can hear it all the time if you listen hard enough, and that could be an issue with Capricorns. Just hearing things, just being aware of things that you don't want to be aware of, the mindless action all around you is just annoying you, and it's something that you want to resist. And you then have to try to accept that there are some things you have control over, and there are some things you don't have control over. That's the way it is. And the things you don't have to have control over, you shouldn't allow them to get you down. And what you can do, Capricorn, is just make sure that your part of the world that you have control over, that little part of the world that is yours, it doesn't matter whether you own it or whether you rent it, it's still yours for the time being. Well, we don't own anything ultimately, because in the end we just die, so everything is permanent. So everything is impermanent and transitory. However much land we own, it's not going to last forever. We can't take it with us. But that part of the world that you have control over, just make sure that you are in control, and you organize what you can organize, and you are aware of your own power, and you are aware of the limits of your own power. And through that approach, I think that you're going to just feel a lot better. And we do have a new moon today, and this new moon is something that you can see in a favorable light. This new moon allows you to think about how you would like things to be organized, how you would like to control your little part of the world. And the new moon is not just going to give you insights. I mean, Capricorns don't really care about insights in themselves, because that's just a waste of time. It's the action that matters. And with this new moon, it gives you the impulse to create change in a way that is very down to earth. And you change things, and you change one thing, you change another thing, and over the next couple of weeks, when this new moon is certainly holding sway, there's a lot you can sort out. And in the end, it doesn't really matter what's happening miles away, what your neighbors are doing, whether you've got speeding cars zooming around. It doesn't matter, because the point is you are in control, and that's what you can do. And so it is a time for taking control, but in a slow and methodical way. And you're not looking for immediate results. Indeed, you know that if anyone is looking for immediate results, they're going to end up disappointed. So just be a Capricorn, and I think that it needn't be such a bad day. Aquarius. Aquarius, things are happening. There is a lot of action, a lot of movement, and it's a day that I would have said is fairly dynamic, and you can really start to get a feel for your own power and your ability to really initiate things. So it's not a day for just doing nothing, or perhaps for letting other people do the work. Not really. It's a day for being at the center of things, and if you're going to do something, give it everything, give it your all, and be 100% committed. And additionally, your creativity is going to be really important, because we've got a new moon in Aquarius, and this new moon, it's in a sign which has great sympathy with your own sign of Aquarius. It's an air sign, and we've got 4 planets in Gemini. So with this new moon, did I say new moon in Aquarius? New moon in Gemini. Yeah, we've got a new moon in Gemini, and this new moon is inspiring, and it could be about starting things, but it's about starting things that you want to start, not what anyone else wants to start. And it's about putting yourself on the map and doing things that are completely individual. They are a reflection of who you are, and it's therefore absolutely essential that you are completely authentic. You're not trying to please anyone. You're not trying to win a popularity contest. You're just trying to be yourself, and you are additionally trying to be uncompromisingly yourself. And so, Aquarius, what is it that makes you different? What is it that can give you satisfaction and meaningful pleasure, and just really give it everything you've got, and don't compromise. I mean, Aquarians tend not to compromise, so it's a natural part of who you are. And Aquarius, of course, is a fixed sign, and sometimes you can be a little too set in your ways. So it's kind of nice that we've got a new moon in Gemini, which is a mutable sign, is about change. And it could be that you want to have another look at what you do and what you do well, and maybe you could do it even better if you put in the effort, but joyful effort. It's not like hard work. That's what this new moon is about. Now, with all these planets in Gemini, what you should be really trying to do, whatever you're doing, is trying to enjoy yourself. And doing something that does give you satisfaction, and that includes your interactions with other people. Other people matter, but other people have to do things on your terms. It's not about doing things on other people's terms. It's all about you. And I think that there's a real possibility that you can have an influence. The moon in Gemini is making a sextile to Mars in Leo, and so that moon sextile Mars could actually make you quite an exciting and interesting person. And you can be dynamic, and also you can benefit from the dynamism of another person, provided it's on your terms. It's not about doing things other people's way. It's about doing things your way, but some people are on your wavelength, and I think with that moon sextile Mars, you might have the opportunity to find these people. And we do have 4 planets in Gemini, and this is a reminder that Jupiter has been in Gemini for a year. it doesn't get as good as this from a Gemini view. The next time, the moon is in Gemini. The next time the moon is in Gemini, Jupiter won't be in Gemini, it'll be in Cancer. So this new moon is a reminder that you haven't got all the time in the world. And I'm saying this to quite a few people, you haven't got all the time in the world. There's something you need to get together, I think. Something which is about you. And, you can have ideas about what makes you special. And then things change and you give up on it. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to reach a stage where the thing that really inspires you becomes a permanent part of your life. You know for sure you're not going to lose it, and it has to be sometimes reinforced, and you have to be confident in it. And so when you look back at the last year, over the last year, to what extent have you achieved that goal? So when Jupiter moves into Cancer, as it will inevitably do in a few weeks' time, are you going to find that you give up on something that was important to you? Or has it become such a strong, important part of your life that it doesn't matter anymore? Jupiter moves into Cancer, you'll still have it. So perhaps what you're trying to do at the moment, or should be trying to do, Aquarius, is to fix your creativity. So fix, of course, Aquarius is a fixed sign. You take something you are doing, you enjoy doing it. It's a bit unstable, perhaps. You might have a change of circumstances and you give up on something, but this has to be something you never give up on, because it shows that you've made something a permanent part of your life, and it's a permanent part of your self-expression. And so perhaps with this new moon, it is a real last chance to give yourself creative fixity and creative certainty, to know that the things that are important to you are not going away, and that you're always going to be able to give everything your best. Pisces, there are a lot of planets in Gemini now. A lot of planets, 4 planets in Gemini. Plus, we got a new moon in Gemini, and inevitably that's going to have an impact on you, as I was saying yesterday. And what I was saying yesterday is, if I remember rightly, that I was talking about what's important to you. I was also talking about your home and your family, and whatever gives you anchoring. And these Gemini planets are really emphasizing this. And we've also got a new moon. We've got a new moon in Gemini. So Pisces, it is a time to be thinking about the things you want to be a permanent part of your life. And also that links with stability, feeling that you are somewhere where you are, 100% secure. And if you haven't been feeling secure recently, then now's another chance to do something about it. New moon in Gemini allows you to have a new approach to not just security, but also to comfort and to where you live. And you might have ideas about where you live with all these planets in Gemini. It will be very clear to you. Is your home serving your purposes? Is it making you feel comfortable? Are your family supporting you as they should be? So these are questions running through your head, and this new moon, it could give you insights. You may be thinking about what else you need to do. And Gemini is a mutable sign, so it's not a time to be taking things for granted. Anything can change. Even something that's been going on for decades can change. You might, for example, decide that you don't want to live where you're living anymore because it's no longer serving your purposes, and that's okay. And additionally, all these planets in Gemini, if your work involves real estate in any form, or you own a lot of land, then the new moon could create a change here in your attitude to what you're doing. It might create opportunities, but it also might give a certain realization, and it might have been something you've been working on over the last year while Jupiter has been moving through Gemini. That could change. So that is a possibility. And overall, Pisces, I think at the moment you are actually pretty articulate. I think you do know how to say what's on your mind. You don't necessarily always feel the need to communicate. Particularly now, I think in many ways you'd prefer to say nothing. But if you have the opportunity to speak, then what you say is compelling, and you're also going to be very good at talking up what you're good at. So, if you're going to a job interview and you want to sing your own praises, you can do it in a way that is right, and you're not going to go to take things too far. And I think you can persuade another person of your brilliance and your genius if that's something you want to do. And if you're involved in art or you're trying to create something, then you can talk about it and people will listen, and your vision, your particular vision of the world is going to be very attractive. So Pisces, I think it's a good day, but it's a day where you may have your work cut out, and maybe it's not just about today. It's about, because we've got the new moon. New moons can last a couple of weeks or until the next full moon. When is the next full moon? The next full moon is it's June, isn't it? June the 11th. June the 11th we've got a full moon. So over the next couple of weeks, then you have got things to do, and if you get it right, I think you can feel more comfortable, and you might feel that you've really been able to anchor yourself in something that is meaningful and important. And if anything is making you feel uncomfortable, or you feel you should be somewhere else, then in that case, I think you'll know what to do, and you'll be able to develop a plan for making that change, whatever that change might be. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and it's now time to look at the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 58, which is the joyous. Now, this hexagram, it kind of looks good, doesn't it? You have got a lake over a lake. This is a symbol it's a very watery trigram to do with a lake, and so when you got a lake over a lake, you get the idea that everything is flowing and people can enjoy themselves and you can relax. But this hexagram can be a bit treacherous. We can get into a situation where we're maybe enjoying ourselves too much, where we're just getting caught up in whatever is going on around us. And it's kind of interesting with this hexagram that it seems to contradict a lot of what I was saying astrologically, because astrologically I was going on and on about the fact that it's a very positive day. There's fire, there's air, and no water. But this is a very watery hexagram, and it can be too watery, and we just get caught up in it all. And one view of this hexagram, which is almost a command, is a view that Greg Winkup in his translation of the I Ching, he doesn't call it the joyous. He calls it stand straight. So he actually puts a command in there, at least that's my interpretation of it. Stand straight. That's what you need to do with this hexagram. Because if you don't stand straight, you get overwhelmed. You've got to stand up for what you believe in. You've got to be aware that things need to be done. And if you just get caught up in all the chaos and flow going around you, you'll get nothing done. Or worse still, you'll just get knocked over by the flow of the water. And we have a moving line here. We have the top line moving. And the top line really reinforces this. There is a real danger that we just get caught up in it all. We enjoy ourselves. Something is easy. And because it's easy, we just stick with it. And things go wrong. And it's... or maybe we just miss opportunities. It's just, it's always nice to say we go with the flow, but we can be blown over by the flow. We can be sucked down by the flow. So going with the flow isn't always such a good thing. And this hexagram, it does move because the top line moves, and it moves to hexagram number 10, which is treading. And that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? So, we are in a situation where we perhaps become a little complacent. We're going with the flow. Everything seems fine. And then we really need to pay attention. Treading is about the tiger. And I always get this image of treading of, just a huge tiger lying in the corridor. And you have to kind of get around this tiger. And you have to be very careful where you tread. And what you don't want to do is tread on the tiger's tail, because then bad things can happen. And there's always that risk of the tiger biting. Although, in one part, the I Ching says, well, tiger bites the man, no problem. It's not necessarily a problem if a tiger bites. But in general, it's a situation where, if we're careful, we can make progress. And we just don't want to get deluded and sucked into the flow of the previous hexagram. Too much emotion, too much having fun, too much merrymaking. We need to be very focused in the end. And if we are focused, in the end, we can get past this tiger and continue on our way. And now I want to look at the new moon. We do have a new moon today. And so here is the new moon. By the way, if you're asking why is Nigel Farage on the thumbnail, I do think this new moon is going to have an effect on Nigel Farage, or at least it could have an effect on Nigel Farage, but more of that later. So here is the chart of the new moon. New moon is at 6 degrees 6 Gemini. I've set this chart for London. And this new moon, it's conjunct Mercury widely. So it's a real Gemini new moon. It's a new moon about talking, communicating. We've got things to say. And if we have in the past found that there's something we couldn't say, then with this new moon, well, we have a chance to finally say what's on our mind. And it's just perhaps a relief, because we have had all these planets in Taurus and things have been held back and they perhaps got stuck. But now we can speak, and we can speak freely. And because it's in Gemini, we're not going to be too worried about which words we use. There's a certain reckless abandon maybe to that new moon conjunct Mercury. So that is something fortunate about this new moon. There aren't any super close aspects involving the new moon. I mean, the new moon is it's widely making a semi-square to Venus. So Venus is making a 45-degree aspect of a new moon. So that means that this new moon might be about relationships and how we manage relationships. Venus in Aries making a 45-degree aspect of a new moon. it could be that this new moon makes some of us aware about how we don't get on with another person and where the clash is. You could say new moon in Gemini, a lot of talking, but Venus in Aries might not appreciate it. And so that may warn that we should be careful how we talk, and we should be careful how we respond to other people talking. So if people are doing a lot of talking and just speaking a lot of nonsense, we shouldn't necessarily feel that we have to judge them. Now, the new moon is a gateway, and so when you get a new moon, you have to look at everything else that's going on in the solar system from the Earth's perspective, and you have to ask, what does that mean? What is brought down to Earth at that time of a new moon? Because the new moon is that gateway. So what are some of the aspects to consider? Okay, I've already talked about new moon square Venus. There is a square between Mars and true black moon Lilith. True black moon Lilith is at 1813 Scorpio. Mars is at 1829 Scorpio, Leo. So Mars exactly square true black moon Lilith could give or provide a little bit of unpleasantness there. Mars is about how people assert themselves, how they get angry, why they get angry, what they get angry about. And Mars square black moon Lilith, true black moon Lilith, is about perhaps getting angry about things going on in the past. And it could be anger which has an emotional quality to it. And I think that this might be quite important, because this new moon, at the time of a new moon, you have got a lot of planets in positive signs, as I've been saying throughout this video. We've got 4 planets in Gemini, we've got the planets in Aries, we've got Venus and Saturn in Aries, and we don't have anything in negative signs. We don't have anything in the reflective signs. The air, the water, and the earth and water signs. Yet, somehow, true black moon Lilith it's not a planet, and it's not something I would regard as in itself as being especially significant, but it's a reminder that with all this positivity, there's something we might forget. There's something darker that we're forgetting about. Everything is in the light, and we don't want to look at the darkness, but something is lurking. But Mars is square true black moon Lilith, and so that could be a disturbance in the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is trying to manifest something, the darkness that no one is aware of, that people just go, or they're only unconsciously aware of, and it's something that could potentially roar into life in particular situations. And it may be something collective. It may not be about us as individuals, but it could have a collective feel to it. And it's also linked with Pluto. It might not be obvious that it's linked with Pluto, because Pluto is making one of those 15 degree series aspects to Mars and true black moon Lilith. 15 degrees, so 15 degrees is the 24th harmonic. So if to show you what I mean, let me just show you let me just put up the 4th harmonic, the 24th harmonic, which would be, well, in fact, it's an opposition on the 12th harmonic, so we only need to look at the 12th harmonic. So if we look at the 12th harmonic, we might see some interesting stuff involving Pluto, Mars, and true black moon Lilith. So let's look at the 12th harmonic, and so there is there you see there's Pluto opposition Mars. So Pluto is opposition Mars and conjunct true black moon Lilith. So at the 12th harmonic, Pluto, Mars, and true black moon Lilith are all linked together. And so Pluto does have a role to play in it all, and so that's what we're trying to bring the 12th harmonic. Well, that's 3 times 4, isn't it? It's threeness is about ease and flow. Fourness is about tension. So it's something that is trying to manifest, and it can be, it can manifest quite easily, but there is a bit of a struggle. But it does, it can, yeah. So we shouldn't forget the sort of rather subtle role of Pluto in this all. And so there is a darkness that some of us might not want to recognize, but it might be there under the surface with this true Black Moon Lilith. So those are a few thoughts about the new moon. I mean, I'll quickly look at the new moon from the viewpoint of the 90 degree dial. See if this tells us anything. I don't think it does, actually, because I don't actually think that this is necessarily a particularly spectacular new moon. But so there's a new moon. It's because Venus is making a semi-square to the new moon, so therefore a semi-square is shown as an opposition on the 90 degree dial. There is that opposition, and as far as the midpoints, I don't see anything especially dramatic. It's actually on the Pluto-Cupido midpoint. So Pluto-Cupido is a combination that can be about love and relationships and obsession. And so it's possible that there's an obsessive quality as far as relationships are concerned, between people, maybe between countries as well. I mean, looking at what Alfred Witter says about the Pluto-Cupido midpoint, Alfred Witter in Rules for Planetary Pictures. I do recommend this book if you're into midpoints. So with Pluto-Cupido, Cupido is a higher, or at least a different octave of Venus, and Pluto is, of course, can have an obsessive quality. And so Witter says about Pluto-Cupido, moon on the Pluto-Cupido, he talks about community here. Moon on the Pluto-Cupido midpoint, passing community transformations. The face of the public is different in style, their looks and their being. A transformed family or community. He says the same thing with Sun on the Pluto-Cupido midpoint. An association member. The man who is placed in changed social surroundings. Community transformation. So that's not something I would have immediately got, the idea of a community transforming. But maybe that's how it's going to work. I mean, sometimes one should just take Witter literally and consider what that might mean for the new moon to be on the Pluto-Cupido midpoint. But I'd also say that it could be about obsessive relationships, wanting to be close, to wanting to be part of a union, but being a little bit obsessed about it. And then there is the question of astrocartography. Where in the world is this new moon likely to have maximum impact? I must emphasize that astrocartography is a very hit and miss technique. I use astrocartography a lot, but I'm talking about things quite theoretically, and to be honest, very often astrocartography doesn't work or doesn't appear to work. But nonetheless, I think it would be a good idea to look at the places that we should be looking at. So with astrocartography, what we're asking the question, where, for example, is this new moon on? Where is it on the ascendant or the descendant? Or if there's Mars, where is Mars on the MC or the IC? And parts of the world that I found interesting was that at the exact time of this new moon, well, there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan, and it was also pretty close to Islamabad, so it may affect Afghanistan and Pakistan. I mean, we kind of forget about Afghanistan, don't we? We ever since the United States did its hurried withdrawal, but things must be happening all the time. I know that Afghanistan has its own issues, and there's fights between the Taliban and ISIS. So I mean, if you think the Taliban are bad, then you've got the ISIS that are kind of even worse. Isn't that how it works? So it's always a problem if you're in Afghanistan, and that can often sort of spill into Pakistan. And also there is the place where Mars is right on the IC. So this is the Mars on the IC line. So at the exact moment of the new moon, Mars is going to be on the IC in all of these places here. So this goes up through South Africa, goes through Africa, so it goes through. Does that go through Sudan? Or it goes through Ethiopia, goes through Cairo. So there are a few places that this Mars on the IC line could impact. It goes sort of Istanbul, and yes, it goes through Kiev. So let's just set the chart. Let's set the new moon for Kiev. So here is the new moon, but if I set it for Kiev, then the mid-heaven is at 1831 Aquarius, and so that means that Mars at 1829 is exactly on the IC set for the Ukrainian capital. And it's always difficult to know how to interpret these things, because Ukraine is solidly at war. So if you say that something is going to happen, well, it's going to happen anyway, isn't it? Because it's always a conflict situation. But it could be with this Mars on the IC, but from the perspective of the Ukrainian government, there is a new issue, and it might not be an issue connected with the actual war. It may be something internal issues, and we shouldn't forget that Mars is square true black moon Lilith. So this Mars true black moon Lilith is right hitting the midheaven of Kiev. So it may not be about the war. I mean, it is about the war, but it may just be about internal dissent or a problem to do with the country itself, rather than directly with what's happening between Ukraine and Russia. So other places that one might want to consider. Well, we should probably reset this for Johannesburg to see if there's. I mean, I know Johannesburg is not the capital of South Africa; it's Pretoria. But if we do set this new moon for Johannesburg, you can see that the Mars is pretty close to the IC. So it's not exact. It's not as exact as Kiev, but we know that the South African economy isn't great. That there are issues. I don't really know much about South Africa. Of course, Donald Trump is saying a lot about the country, but it is a part of the world that we should perhaps be looking at. And finally, what about if we continue on this line, then one might want to look on the other side of the African continent and look at Cairo. So Cairo, the capital of Egypt. Again, set for Cairo, Mars is exactly on the IC. So again, I don't know what's going on in Egypt, but Egypt is another country that we might want to be looking at. We should really be looking at that whole red line that I showed you, where Mars is on the IC, and of course Mars is square true black moon Lilith, so that might make it especially poignant. And then looking at a few people who might be influenced by this new moon. One of them is Marco Rubio. So Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, he was born on May the 28th. So tomorrow, that would be 26th, Wednesday. That's going to be Marco Rubio's 54th birthday. So happy birthday to Marco Rubio on tomorrow, Wednesday. And so Marco Rubio has his son. We don't have a time of birth for Marco Rubio. It should be available, but it's not. I think it would be on his birth certificate, but he has his son at around 6-7 Gemini. So this new moon is on Marco Rubio's sun, and so it might be good for him. I mean, we don't know much about his son, but I think that this new moon could be a new beginning for him, and that may say something about his areas of focus, how he's functioning as Secretary of State, what he's doing with all the various issues he's having to work with, whether it's Ukraine or the Middle East or Iran, relations with Europe. The new moon does represent a new beginning and a new approach, a new reality that he has to deal with. And this new moon, he does have Sun square true black moon Lilith, so maybe he'll get his way on something. But as he's Secretary of State, this new moon could have an impact on American foreign policy, because it impacts America's, the United States is a chief diplomat. And another American who might be impacted by this new moon is Jill Biden. So Jill Biden we'd have a time of birth for Jill Biden. Of course, we've just had her husband's cancer diagnosis. There are all sorts of stories or rumors about when this diagnosis was actually made, but at face value, if we take what we're told, he had the diagnosis very recently. So she has got a new moon on her moon, and her moon in the 6th house. So with moon in the 6th house, well, the 6th house is about health. It can be about service. And so it might be with a new moon on her moon that it's a new role for herself. Perhaps she has to spend a lot of time looking after her husband's health needs, as we would expect. So perhaps this new moon in Jill Biden's case tells us nothing we don't know. It's obvious, isn't it? I mean, she's Joe Biden's wife. Her husband's just had this diagnosis. Again, I'm taking this at face value, what we're told. And that means, I assume, visits to hospital, some hormone treatment, and she's going to be wanting to play a big role in it. And that might be an important point with Jill Biden, with this new moon. I think she's going to be very active in terms of giving her views about her husband's treatment and how he should be treated, how she should not be treated. And she's going to have all sorts of ideas, and maybe she'll be quite annoying if you're a doctor, from a doctor's perspective, because she is definitely going to be giving her opinions with this new moon conjunct her moon. And another woman connected with presidents is Melania Trump. She's got her Mars at 5 degrees Gemini. So this new moon's right on her Mars. It could make her annoyed. Or it could say something about her husband, because you could say from a projection perspective, Mars is Mars is a male planet, so Mars represents her husband. Her husband's a Gemini, so the new moon on Mars might be about what her husband is doing, and also what her husband is doing, and also how she is responding to it. So this new moon perhaps encourages her to be quite assertive and to express her views and express her annoyance. And so that might be one way of interpreting this new moon. But it's difficult because we don't have a time of birth for Melania. And Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, I don't really want to say much about Keir Starmer because it's so complicated. I think I need to sort of look at Keir Starmer again quite soon because there's lots of weird stuff going on with Keir Starmer, sort of rumours, and there was this fire set up. With fire was one of his properties, wasn't it? There was a fire, and some Ukrainians, I think a Ukrainian was arrested for it, and was it more than one Ukrainian? I don't know. And so, what was actually going on? Of course, there's rumours that Russia was involved, but maybe it was something more complicated than that. I mean, who knows? But the thing about Keir Starmer that I specifically wanted to point out with regard to this new moon is his Mars-Saturn midpoint. So Keir Starmer's Mars-Saturn midpoint is at approximately 21 Aries. So that means that this new moon is 45 degrees from his Mars-Saturn midpoint. So this new moon is on his Mars-Saturn midpoint. And I mean, this could mean Mars-Saturn is about his frustration, his annoyance. He might be attracted to bad things, bad policies, bad ideas. And so the new moon in Keir Starmer's chart may actually bring out the worst in him. I mean, that is absolutely possible. And finally, I want to finish with Nigel Farage. So Nigel Farage has his midheaven at 5 degrees 38 Gemini. So new moon on Nigel Farage's midheaven. Now, that might actually be quite a good thing. So Nigel Farage is increasingly seen as the unofficial leader of the opposition in the UK. If there was an election, his Reform Party is likely to do very well, and he seems to be able to completely benefit from Labour's mistakes, from Keir Starmer's mistakes. He gets all the benefits. The Conservative Party no longer gets a benefit, and so this is about his profile. So the new moon is going to emphasise Farage's profile, even more. It's going to really push him into the limelight. He's already in the limelight, but this new moon might represent a change in his approach. It could be a new beginning. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a favourable event. I mean, not necessarily. And it might be a good idea then to look at what midpoints his midheaven is on. So here is his so that's his midheaven. So he does have the midheaven on the Sun Jupiter midpoint, and midheaven on the Sun Jupiter midpoint is pretty fortunate. So we already know that Farage has become a successful politician. So with midheaven on the Sun Jupiter midpoint, that is about his success. And he's also got midheaven on the Venus Pluto midpoint, and so Venus Pluto is a person who is really quite compelling. He can be compelling, and midheaven on the Jupiter Cupido midpoint. So Jupiter Cupido is about making connections, making favourable connections. So I think some of the midpoints that his midheaven are on are pretty fortunate. There are other things that are perhaps not quite so fortunate, like on the Aries Hades midpoint. That is a very collective thing, and he's able to perhaps take advantage of the unpleasantness in society. I mean, that is one way of looking at it. But anyway, this new moon is on his midheaven, and I suspect overall, this new moon is probably going to work in his favour and is going to help sort of push him and his cause even further. But it might also indicate a new challenge. There's something new is coming into his political life. It could be his personal life, but it's coming into his political life, which he needs to consider. And he shouldn't just assume that everything is going to stay the same. So those are a few thoughts about Nigel Farage and this new moon. So thanks very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.